I have, this is, what is the date here? This is March 18th, 2022. And it's been years, really, not months, years, I've been trying to establish this connection with Sarah Corson. When I was a child on the Isle of Pines, Cuba, she came down as Sarah Murphy, Murphy, Murphy. And Murphy. And she won the heart of everybody in the school, in the island. And then she went away. And a year or so later, she came back with a husband, Ken Corson. Her name was Sarah Corson. And since then, she's done some quite amazing things. She's been a missionary in Puerto Rico. She's gone to the Amazon, and she's written a book about God. She's written 2 books, I think. And I'm going to just give you her. I just want to, Sarah, could you say a few words about your spiritual awakening as during the course of your career?
Well, it started with my childhood, you know, and I grew up in a family. My dad was a Methodist minister, and so every night he read the scriptures to us and prayed with us. And I just grew up thinking all the things I heard about Jesus were the most wonderful things, how he loved everybody, helped everybody. And then when I found out that he said we should love our enemies, I just thought, well, that's a wonderful thing. And I was a little kid, so I just took it at face value. And then when I went away to college, I was in a history class where the professor felt it was his duty to knock kids out of their ruts and make them think for themselves and try to destroy any religious things they had been taught so they would think for themselves. And it put a lot of doubts in my mind. And I was really struggling. At night, I would pray and I would think, how about if my prayers just don't go past the ceiling? How about if there is no God? And I had that struggle when I was 18 years old. And after weeks of thinking about it, and I didn't tell anyone, but I just thought about it. I thought, oh, my family would be so sad if they found out that I didn't believe anymore. And then one night I just thought, I can't bear this anymore. I've got to know if it's real or not, if God is real or not. And so I lay there in bed thinking about it. And I thought, why do I say that I'm a Christian? Is it because my parents told me that? Do I just have a secondhand religion? And then I began to think, what would happen to my faith or my belief in God, in Jesus, if my parents told me they were mistaken and now they found out there really was no God? And everybody I knew and admired as a child also told me that. How about if everybody in the world that I knew who had been instrumental in helping me to form my faith, how about if they all told me it was all a hoax, it wasn't right? And would I still believe? And then I thought, what is the greatest thing in the world that I could give my life to? And I thought through many different things. And then I came to the conclusion the greatest thing was love. And I thought, I cannot imagine anything in this world that could be stronger and more powerful and more against the beliefs of the ordinary people in the world than to say we should love our enemies. And I thought about that a little while, and I thought, yes, I think even if everybody that I knew that believed in Jesus were to tell me it was all a hoax, I would still believe in him because of his teachings, his love, and love for your enemies. And and so I made up my mind about 3 a.m. that night. I made up my mind that that's what I'm going to give my life to. And it was a great relief after weeks of struggling and thinking through this. And it just came to me in that moment, you know, some people want religion because they want a fire escape from hell. They want, I don't want to go to hell, and I believe I'll go to hell if I don't get my life lined up with God. And I thought, that's a cheap reason to give your life to God, because it's a selfish reason. And I said to myself, I was thinking, I believe in Jesus so much, and in the things that he taught us so much, that even if there were a big war at the end of time, I was just 18-year-old imagining things. Even if there were a big fight between the devil and God, and the devil won and threw Jesus in hell and took over heaven for all of his followers, I wouldn't want to go to heaven. I want to be where Jesus is. I'd go to hell for Jesus. And with that statement, when that statement came into my mind, I just knew it was what I wanted to base my life on. And I guess from there, I began to seek for more understanding. And you know, we've grown a lot in those years. I'm 86 now, and I was 18 then. How many years is that? Over half a century. And I have learned a lot of other things. But that decision has remained firm. And it was, I felt it was the beginning of my spiritual awakening, where I wasn't just taking a secondhand religion, but where I really made up my mind what was important in this world. And so from there, then, you know, the Bible says there's one way to God, and it's through Jesus. And that bothered me, because I knew people who were Buddhist and people who were Hindu and other religions. And I loved the writings of Confucius and other writings of the Eastern peoples. I read those and I loved them, and I identified with them. And so I had that big problem in my mind. Why do they say there's just one way and it has to be Jesus? What about all these other people that love God too and are seeking for him? And I had a wonderful experience once when later, after I married and my husband and I, Ken, we started CFAT. CFAT is Servants in Faith and Technology, where we're trying to help in the hunger crisis and poverty, injustice, and the marginalized people of the world. We have a training institute for their leaders and appropriate technologies for physical help, but also that's just like the hardware we teach. The software is community development, how to get communities working together. And developing together in an integrated way, spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, socially, economically, the total aspect of life. And we have software to go with our appropriate technologies like solar, teaching how to cook with the sun if they don't have firewood and electricity and gas, or how to purify water, those kind of things. But in addition to the physical, we have to have the software to go with it. Because if a community is divided and hates each other and works against each other, they're not going to develop like they would if they work together in love. An old man in Bolivia, way out where we lived in the jungles, we lived in a little dirt floor thatched roof hut way out 200 miles from the nearest nail, Ken said. The bamboo houses were tied together with strips of inner bark of the mora tree, they called it. And this old man that lived next door to me in one of those little huts, whenever anything needed to be done in the community, he would say, "Oh, we can do it. Let's all do it together. Let's work together like the fingers of one hand." And his expression, working together like the fingers of one hand, just really rang a bell with me. It really clicked. And I think about that many times. And so that has become part of the software that we teach in CFAT. But still, I was plagued with the idea. I called myself a Christian, and yet, and I believed, I knew that these people from other religions, that many of them were really valid and really, had things to teach me. And so I just kept searching, what could that have meant? Why? And then I had this great experience. We had started CFAT, and Arun Gandhi is the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi. And he spent years of his childhood living with Mahatma Gandhi, his grandfather, when he lived in South Africa. And he came to Mississippi State University to study race relations to compare race relations in Alabama with the caste system in India, and how they were different or how they were similar. And while he was there, someone told him about CFAT, and he came over to spend a weekend with us. And actually, we got our church to invite him to speak in the church. And we were hosting them, and it was a great experience. His wife was named Sunanda. And while he and Ken talked one evening, she and I talked and really got acquainted. And she told me of all of the poor villages in the low caste in India that she and her husband had this nonprofit they were working to help these people and to teach them to read, and many, many things she was doing. And I just felt so at one with her, because we had been doing this in CFAT, trying to reach the most marginalized people that we could know in the world that needed somebody to listen to them. They had a lot to teach us. And as I began to listen to her tell about her struggle to help the poor in India, I just felt, oh, we are sisters in Christ. We are really, I've never met anyone that I could identify with any more than this lady. And then suddenly she was talking, I think she mentioned something about the Ku Klux Klan and their studies of racism here. And the Ku Klux Klan claim to be Christians. They say it's based on the Bible, which of course is a twisted version, a perverted version. And so she said, what I can't understand is if they are Christians, why would they burn crosses in people's yards? She said, because the cross is a holy symbol of your faith. If I were a Christian, I certainly would find something else to burn, not a cross. But what I heard was if I were a Christian. So I knew she was Hindu, but I had forgotten it because she had the same values I had. And that just struck something to me. If she were, she's not a Christian. She doesn't believe in Jesus. Maybe she did. I found out later that Arun said that Mahatma Gandhi every night would read to them before they went to bed from different religious books. And he wouldn't let them go to bed until he read something from the Gospels that Jesus had said. And let me put this in a little, they say I give too many rabbit trails to go around with other things, but this is relevant. How is it? Now, Billy, you know, I'm 86 years old and I forgot what my rabbit trail was, but it was about Arun. Oh, now I know what it was. You know, E. Stanley Jones. I'm going on another trail, but it is important to understand what I'm saying. E. Stanley Jones was a great Christian missionary, spent half his time in India every year, half in the US. And he was a good friend of Mahatma Gandhi. He's dead now, of course. And he would visit him. And one time he asked him, he said, you know, you believe in Jesus. You live out the teachings of Jesus, but you won't become a Christian. And Gandhi said, oh, you're Jesus I love. You're Jesus I worship. But it's you Christians that I don't want to be associated with. And that just struck me strange. And then I understood it, you know. So back to Sunandra, when she was telling me this, then, you know, we had a wonderful time and they went on. But the next few days, I just kept praying, Lord, I can't understand this. There is no better person that I call Christian in the world than Sunandra Gandhi. She just had everything I understand to be wrapped up in who Jesus is. And I said, why is she not on the road to God because she doesn't accept the Christian faith? And I was walking down the sidewalk when I was thinking that. And I had a moment of enlightenment. You know, we better not claim that God told me this, because we get our own thoughts so mixed up. That's part of the problems of the world. People said, God told me to do this. Well, a lot of times that maybe God did sometimes, but this is often our own understanding, you know, of what we project. Some people say we make God in our own image, you know, an anthropomorphic God, instead of realizing we are made in his image. And I don't think that means physical either. I think that means he's given us freedom. He's given us creativity. He's made us like him. Anyway, anyway, when this moment that came to me as I was walking down the sidewalk was something that I really felt was a message from God. You know, it was what I had worked through in my mind, but it was just one instant. I've had about 4 times in my life, I think, that suddenly, without my knowing the answer came to me. And this was one of those times. And I felt like the message was, there is one way, only one way to God. But it's not the name Jesus, it's the essence of his being.
Of course. It's like in here in Taiwan, they say pingwa for apple. In Cuba, they say manzana for apple. And in Alabama, you say apple for apple. That doesn't mean it's a different fruit. It's more than apple. It just has different names.
Exactly. And it says it clearly in the Christian Bible, God is love. And love is the essence of who God is and of Jesus being. And that was a serendipity when that thought just came out of the blue to me. And I felt like I claimed that as divine revelation. It's the essence of who Jesus is.
Well, when you came down to the Alpines, everybody recognized you. You were that essence. That was your essence. And you were like a light in a dark place. You shined light and you opened up other people's hearts. I don't know how many people are running around in different parts of the world that you have lit the fire in their hearts, you know.
It wasn't me, Billy. It was.
I didn't say it was you. I didn't say it was you, but there's a fire in you, you see?
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
I'm passionate about this. I believe it.
We have this idea about me, me, mine, but that's just the ego. There's something in us that's so much deeper, more true. And that's why the Buddhists sit meditating. And that's why the Hindus do what they do. And that's why the Christians do what they do. The people do take it wrong, you know. The Christians in the United States now, it's a really sort of a sad mess.
Oh,
you know, it's really sad. That's not Christianity, to have these huge, big money churches, and you know.
I feel like Gandhi when he said, I really don't want my name to be associated with that type of Christian, you know. Anyway,
no one would associate you with anything bad, Sarah. You shine just as much now as you did back when you were. I think you were 18 when you came to the Alpines, weren't you?
I was.
And it was you. We couldn't believe, you know. I couldn't believe it.
Might have been 19. It was the year after.
Yeah.
Year after I had that experience where I made up my mind I'd go to hell if I had to be with Jesus.
And you didn't try to spread it. You didn't proselytize. It was just who you. It was what you were that people could see, and you changed them.
Oh, I just am like the moon reflects the light of the sun, you know, and I think that's what we all are. We reflect the light that comes to us, and it's not our light, but it's
not our light. It's not the ego's light, but I think in a sense it might be our light, in the sense that light comes out from people like you know. People like Jesus and people like I guess Gandhi was quite a fellow.
Oh yes. And I really believed in nonviolence, you know, and what he taught.
Oh, yeah.
And then we were confronted with those years of genocide in Rwanda.
Oh, God, yeah.
And you think, are you going to just stand by and not do anything? And my son, Tom, you just met him.
Yeah.
He went to a Mennonite college because it taught, not because it was Mennonite, but because he wasn't so interested in that at that time, but because it taught aviation and he wanted to be a pilot of small planes. And we had lived in the jungles in Bolivia, and it was so hard to get supplies or medicine or any needed thing. And he was just thinking, oh, I could fly a plane. So he went to this college, and with some people who believed they never, in any circumstances, hit anybody or did violence, he went to a shopping mall one night. He was driving his van and took several girls with him that wanted to go shopping. And when it closed and they were the last people out and there were not many people around at all, and they went out, here came a big van of young men that were intent on doing harm, and they were going to kidnap the girls. And they all grabbed a girl and started in their van with it. And they had a couple of the boys there that believed with him too. Tom had a couple of boys and these girls. And the boys, were trying to be true to their beliefs. And they kept saying, oh, turn them loose, please turn them loose, and just wringing their hands, not knowing what to do. They wanted to fight, but they felt they couldn't. And I guess Tom, well, he wasn't Mennonite. And so he dived into the guys, and the end of it was the police were making a circle around, and the boys ran at the last minute. But until that happened, Tom fought those guys by himself. He ended up with a broken nose. He was banged face down into the pavement so many times. His eyes were just red. They were so bloodshot. I mean, for days afterward, he was really hurt. And then I thought, I'm glad that he saved them.
Yes, yes.
But I believed in nonviolence. Yeah. And I believed what the boys believed, but where is it? And I had to work through that too. And I finally came to the conclusion, the scripture says, human beings see on the outside, God sees the heart. And it's, if we love in our hearts, we have to do sometimes acts of violence that are exemplified by love. For example.
Exactly. He didn't do violence to hurt them. He did violence to help the girls.
Yes, to save them from being taken off. And he did till the police got there. But I remember realizing and coming to the conclusion that if there were a child here and someone was coming to hurt the child, to kill the child, or to take the child, and what would I do? Well, I don't think I could kill somebody to keep them from killing me. Maybe we should, I don't know, but I don't think I could. But I could, if I had a gun, I could pull the trigger to keep somebody from killing that child.
Child's innocent.
Right. But you know what? I couldn't do it in anger. I couldn't do it like, you terrible guy. I would do it. I'm so sorry. I have to kill you. It's what we are inside. It's the essence of it. Is that not true?
Oh, it is true. Of course it's true.
So anyway, that was the way I reconciled it in my thinking. I don't know. And then I had a chance to prove it. Billy, because we were doing community development for the Methodist Church in the Alto Beni of Bolivia. That's a tropical part of Bolivia, down in the the rivers that run into the Amazon. It's the Amazon drainage area down there. And that's where we lived, in the dirt floor, thatched roof huts. And with the people, we felt like when you're going to try to help someone, well, you don't take your American lifestyle in with you.
No.
You go and live on their level, because you don't know how they're feeling. You don't know what they need. People think they know what you need. Americans are so good at that. We can tell, oh, those poor people, they need this, let's send them this. And we don't know what they need till we have walked in their shoes. And so that's what we determined to do. And we lived on the economic level they did, and physical level they did, totally as much as we could. And of course, we didn't do unsanitary things. That we took care of our 4 children we had down there with us too, but we lived close to their level. And as a matter of fact, I didn't mean to say this, but just when we were leaving, we'd lived there 2 years, and we were leaving, and we loved those people like our own people. And a lady came to say goodbye, and she said, "We realize you're not like us. You don't live like we do." And I was crushed, because we had done everything we could to live like they did physically. And I said, how do we not live like you do? We eat what you eat. If you don't have meat, we don't have meat. If, we wash our clothes in the stream like you do. We lived like you have. And she said, "Oh, I don't mean that. I know you live like us that way. I mean, you love everybody, and we just love our own little group." And I thought, you're right. I don't live like you do. I'm glad you recognized it, because it's what you feel inside. It's not just what you can't, for a little while, you can put on a show of what you would like to be, but it comes through.
It comes through.
Yeah, it's what you are really reflecting, who you are trying to reflect, what you are trying to reflect.
In America, a lot of those evangelist Christians, they've never seen a Christian like you. They wouldn't know to recognize it. But you're the real thing.
But that's not because of me,
Well, we're not talking about you. We're talking about something more important.
That's right. And I'm just so thankful for the experiences that I've had that taught me those things. And the most that I have learned has been from the poor. In fact, my book, you said I'd written a book. I've written 3 books, and
3 books. Wow.
3 I've published, but I've got 3 more that are almost ready to be
published. I hope you write them.
But the one that I wrote that CFET now uses as a manual for our software, I mentioned our software that we teach in community development, is called Untangling the Web of Poverty. And it's been translated into Spanish also. It's in Spanish and English. And it's on Amazon. And anyway, this book, Untangling, I'm not trying to give a plug for my book. I'm sorry. It sounded
I'm very interested, Sarah.
Untangling
book. You're not that type of person. You wouldn't do that.
That just came out. But anyway, Untangling the Web of Poverty is the name of it. And in that book, explain, I believe, counting the United States, we've lived in 7 countries. And I can't remember at this age little details, but I think it's 7 countries and 5 states is what I think we have lived in. And everywhere we've lived, my husband Ken and I purposely chose to live as close as we could to the people that we had come there to serve, whatever, and become one of them. Else we couldn't know what they were thinking, what they were needing, unless we suffered that same need, And so we were living, if we have time, I want to tell this one experience where I had a chance to try out my idea of nonviolence, where I had to try it. I didn't want the chance, but it was presented to me, and I'm thankful today for it because it took all doubt out of my mind. Do you have time for me to tell that?
I think I wouldn't want to miss this for anything. We could do another one, but let's tell it. We'll make this. Tell it.
I'll make it as short as I can.
No, tell the whole thing, and then we'll stop. And Sarah, what we'll do? Would you like to have another? Could we do this another time?
Well, that's up to you. If you think there's anything that you want to hear.
I think we could do it 100 times with you. Tell us a story here, though.
Well, this one. So we were down there. At this time, we had already moved home, and that community that we had lived 2 years with the purpose of community development in an integrated way, spiritually, physically, mentally, socially, clean drinking water, all of those kind of things for that town. And protein, fish project, those things. And Bolivia has had 186 coups in its first 150 years. And now it's more than that since then. But it's always the poor who suffer. It's always people hunting for power, the military and the dictatorships and so on. And so there was another coup, which happened every year or sometimes more than once a year. But we were so far out, we had no telephones. We had, there was only one road into the jungle. Little, in Alabama, we'd call it the Sawmill Road. It was just a little 1-lane dirt road that was hard to get over. The last time I went up that road, it took me 46 hours to go 200 miles. We got stuck so many times. We had so many problems getting through that little road up over the Andes to the capital. So we had moved home and started CFAT. That little village of Sapetchos, those people inspired us to start CFAT, to have a training institute that would take leaders from refugee camps or very small villages that didn't have clean water, electricity, those kind of things, that needed help. And so they have come now from 93 countries to study with us here in the backwoods of Alabama in our CFAT campus, and going back, taking these things back to their countries. And that was, we started in 1979, so that's over 40 years ago, when all that. But we were back here doing that. And in 1980, there was a coup. But I'm ahead of my story. The first thing, they asked us to come down for the summer and help them do a research project on amaranth. Amaranth is the grain that has the most protein of all grains.
What's the most protein, amaranth?
Amaranth, and it's what the Mayans used and the Aztecs and all that. And they knew that the people who ate amaranth instead of rice or other grains as their staple food lived longer and had less health problems. And that's because of the protein in it and not just carbohydrates. So they called it the food of the gods. And as a result of that, the Spanish conquerors that came and fought those indigenous tribes tried to wipe out amaranth.
You're kidding.
They burned all their fields that were ready to be harvested for the, the off season, and just caused much suffering. And they tried to get rid of it because their leader said, if we destroy their religion and their hope and faith, then we'll destroy them. We can conquer them. And they felt like amaranth was a key part of their religion because they'd make cakes of amaranth to offer to their gods, that kind of thing. So anyway, amaranth was coming back. And there was a worldwide research thing being done by the people up there in Pennsylvania that publish Organic Gardening Magazine and Prevention. And so they wanted to try out 5 different kinds of amaranth in all over the world in different climates to see which variety did best where. And they were reintroducing it as a grain to really help in the hunger crisis. So we became part of that. And the community in Supetio, this little village that we lived in the Alto Beni, well, they were thrilled that they could be part of that worldwide research. And they asked us to come spend the summer with them and help them do it. But Ken had already promised to help another mission get involved in some technologies in Haiti, and he couldn't go. And so we decided to divide for that year, separate for that year, that summer, to do both. So I went to Supetio because I knew they lived there. I knew the people I could, and I took a team of young people that wanted to go, including 2 of my children, Tom and Kathy. Kathy's our international training director at CFAT now too. And so Ken took one of our children, and the older one stayed there and helped run CFAT so that we could do this. And we had only been there 1 month of the 3 that we meant to stay. We were out working this part of the jungle we had cleared to plant the different amaranth types when we heard a plane. And it was unusual because there were no main airlines that went over us. This is in 1980, and they rarely ever heard or saw a plane come over. And this plane was flying low. And our leader was Benjamin Paredes. He's been our partner down there since 1979. And he said, he's an indigenous man who had been mayor of the town when we got there. And he said, run, run for there was a field of cacao trees, chocolate trees there. And he said, run, get under the trees quick. And I thought, wow, it's just an airplane. But he ran with all he was worth. And our young people that were, the Bolivian young people were working with the American young people on our team. They had combined to make a cultural experience for both. And we all began to follow him. We just got under those trees when that plane flew over just above treetops. And it flew a kilometer down to where the village was and circled our village. And the 3rd time came in and lowered a volley of shots on the little bamboo houses all down in there. Fortunately, no one was killed, but some of the houses, the walls were knocked down. And I was in total shock. I'd never been thrown into a situation like that. And as soon as it flew off, it was a warning sign. And then somebody came, a man walking came and told us from the nearest place where they had a radio, ham radio to talk. There's been a coup in the capital city, and they have identified Zapecho as a place where there's opposition to their coup. And there needed to be opposition to it. It was a very ruthless dictatorship that gained power in 1980. Garcia Mesa was the man who became president as a result of that coup. He grabbed power, but he didn't keep it but a few years. And that's all another story. I can tell an hour or two on that of what happened. But I'm going to take it down to the personal level, how it showed me about nonviolence, because we rushed back to the village and they were just all in, upset what has happened here. And the whole town was just trembling like that. And that night was Thursday night when we usually had a service. And I'll never forget the title Benho preached. And he said, God is more powerful than an atomic bomb. Now, you young people, remember that and use spiritual weapons instead of trying to use your physical weapons, because we didn't have guns. They were prohibited by a dictatorship that was in power at that time. Nobody had guns, but the tools they had, those young people realized they were coming in, soldiers were coming. Can you hear that? We're in a very bad thunderstorm right now. And so the soldiers were headed. We were 200 miles out in the jungle. And somebody came and told me, keep all of your young people inside the house, because this is a dictatorship that says they're out to kill all Americans and all Methodists, and you will get it on both counts. Because in Bolivia, Methodists are known as the people that help the poor, and communists were known as people that help the poor. And that's the way they thought, their worldview. And these were neo-Nazis. In fact, they were trained by Klaus Barbie. Klaus Barbie was alive at that time. Remember who he was, the butcher of Lyon for Hitler, that exterminated so many millions of Jews. He ran the gas chambers. And at that time, he was in Bolivia, hiding out there, leading this revolution to try to take over and get power for Garcia Mesa. We didn't know that at that moment, but we found out. And so I said, well, that all of the men of the town were going out to hide because out in the jungle. And I thought, I can't take them out because they can barely make it here in this house without electricity, without the things they're used to, without running water. How am I going to take them out in the jungles and say, no, we'll stay in the house, but don't go out in the yard? And jeeps began to pass by full of soldiers, and we stayed in the house. But we had a ham radio on the Methodist network, and we had a crystal in that we could only talk to the Methodist network on it. We had not been involved in political activities. I don't get involved in politics in other countries, my own country maybe, but not other countries. And they saw our ham radio tower. So somebody in that community, and we knew who it was, it was a European man who had come to help with he had a grant to help the teachers, upgrade the teachers of the area. And he was working in community development too, but with different ideas from us. He was a Marxist. I went to see him and we discussed it and were frank with each other where we differed and where we worked together. And so we could not work together, even though we had the same objective, because he used violent methods. He was trying to foment revolution, and we were trying to do it another way, which takes longer, but is more permanent, with the way of love. And so Ben Ho preached that night. And when he came out, if they had heard his sermon, they would have known he was not fomenting revolution, because he told the young people, don't go out and cut these trees. That's what they were doing. Their only weapon was to cut trees down the side of the road to block the road, so the Jeeps couldn't get through until they spent hours cutting through the logs to get a path through. And he said, you're just going to make them angry, and your cutting trees cannot begin to fight their guns and all the weapons they have. But yet they did it. And as we went out of the church, a little bamboo dirt floor church, we went out of it that night. There were 3 soldiers there with guns, and they were very polite, and they said to me, Senora, we've come to interview your preacher here. We want to take him with us. He knew it wasn't for an interview. He knew they were looking. He'd been in past revolutions. He knew they were taking him because he was a leader, and they wanted the people to be left without any direction what to do. And they took the leader of our young people, and they took the song leader, and they took everybody that they'd seen as leaders. But they lied to me. They said, don't worry, we'll bring them back in the morning. We're just taking them for some interviews to find out about the community. But they didn't bring them back. And then that night I'd stayed up late, writing by candlelight, and all the kids were asleep, and Tom, my boy, was sleeping on the front porch because there wasn't enough room in the house for all 17 of the team. And it began to get cooler than usual. And I thought, I'm going to take a blanket and spread on him. He'll wake up early in the morning cold. And I'll put the blanket over him. He was asleep. And suddenly I heard a crash, and it was a screened in porch. I could see out into, it was almost, if not fully, a full moon. I could see out, but they could not see in because I was in the shadow of the porch. And I looked out, and there were about 30 soldiers rushing our house with their big guns. And they would come in by twos and divide at the house and go around like that. And one had crashed into our rain barrel. And suddenly I realized the people were against us. I thought, I can't believe this. We've done nothing. We should have. They need to have the revolution stopped, but we weren't going to do it. We were not part of that country. But you know, I realized we could not, I didn't even think that God would stop jam 30 rifles at one time. And I knew they were about to kill us. I'd been told they were going to kill all Methodists and all Americans. And I just thought, well, this is it. This is my life. But mostly I was thinking of these young people in here, their lives too. And then my other children back at home. And oh, I just felt my heart beating in my temples so strong. I thought, well, I'll just die right here looking at you. I'll have a stroke. You don't have to shoot. And and I just had one moment to pray. You don't wait till you're in a situation like that to pray for the first time. I had one moment to pray, and I just prayed, God, take care of these kids and take care of my kids. I'm about to leave them. I know they're going to kill me, but please don't let them shoot till I can catch my breath, because I don't want to die afraid. I've lived my life trusting you, and I want to trust you as I die. Please take this fear away. Billy, that moment, I wasn't afraid. I felt like I was on top of the situation. I felt like, yeah, I'm about to die, but somehow God will use my death to accomplish more than my life could. And it was just the most peaceful feeling. And from that moment until they left, I didn't plan what I was going to say or do. I couldn't. I just did what I was, what God had
What I
done.
was.
What?
That's beautiful. I did what I was.
Yeah, that's it. Because God builds those things into us constantly if we allow him to, by the experiences he gives us, if we're alert to listen. And so I began to move and act and speak, and I was shocked myself by some of the things I said, because I felt like a marionette, a puppet, where I felt like God was pulling my strings. You know what I mean? So I would say things that I would never have said if I'd stopped and thought about them. And I walked out of the screened-in porch into the midst of them, and there was a young soldier. He didn't have anything against us. He just wanted food to eat, and so he joined the army. And I put my hand on his shoulder, and I said, hermano, brother, in Spanish, because I feel like we are hermanos with every human being. We are related, and we don't have, even our enemies, everybody, if we could know and get acquainted. So I put my arm on his shoulder and I said, hermano, and he said, whoa, and he jumped like that. And then everybody knew they'd been discovered, and they all came rushing where the sound came from. And I just remember the long legs of that. Found out later he was a lieutenant that was directing this little battle within the bigger one. It was a huge battle all over Bolivia, but this is just a little one here. And he came, his long legs in the moonlight, as he quickly rushed over to where that man had screamed, and got to where we were, and he stuck his rifle in my stomach, and he said, I'll teach you how to try to come down here from the United States and stop my revolution. And I said, hermano, I have done nothing to stop your revolution. I'm here to help the people develop their community. I'm here to stop hunger. We're here working to help the poor. And so he just grabbed me by the shoulder and whirled me around, and with a gun in my back, he pushed me back to the back door and went in where the candle was lit. And there, the other soldiers had got all 17 of the young people on the team, and they were sitting at our table with the benches there, one little candle light, and with their, and when I turned around, he stuck the gun in my stomach again. And the result, this would take a long time to tell it all, the details, but I'll tell you the result was he said, I've come to kill every one of you. And I said, and I didn't know I was going to say this, but I just said it. I said, well, I will pray for you as I die because God loves you and I love you too because I follow Jesus. And he said, and I said, and Jesus teaches us to love your enemies. And he said, what foolishness is this? Nobody loves their enemies. And I said, well, you have the gun, but I felt like I was in control. Not me, but something inside me was in control. And I would much rather be in my case and die than to be in his case and be forced to kill somebody if he would be punished. He said, nobody loves their enemy. And I said, well, those who follow Jesus do, and you can prove it. You can kill me fast or you can kill me slow. I said, there's a machete over there. Chop me to pieces little by little and let me die slowly to show you that I'll die praying for you because God loves you and I love you too. And I thought, Sarah, why did you say that? They do things like this in those revolutions. But he said, and he stuttered for a full minute or more. And he took the gun out of my stomach and pointed it toward the floor. And he said, I don't want to kill you, but I have to. If I don't kill you, they'll kill me because Klaus Barbie is the one that's training us and directing us. I just can look the other way and I can be shot for it. He has plenty of hungry people that will take my place just to get food.
Sad.
I felt so sorry for him. And the next thing I said, I really felt it. I didn't have to pretend. I said, oh, hermano, I am so sorry. I don't want you to die. You're not ready to die yet. I'm ready to die. So if you're going to be killed, just kill me instead. And I really felt love, compassion for that man, not my own, but God's love through me. And he began saying, I can't do it. I can't do it. I could kill anybody. I've killed so many people. That's just my job to exterminate them. But he said, there's something in this house that I can't fight. And I've never felt this before. I'll just have to let them kill me. And he took his gun down. And then he decided to take us prisoners. It says my battery is running low. I don't know.
Battery on the computer, you mean?
What?
On the computer?
That's what it says, yeah.
It's not plugged in?
Yeah, it is plugged in.
Is the plug connected?
I just don't understand technology. So
Okay.
I'll finish quickly in case it stops. And so the end was, he took the men, he took Tom. Tom was 15 at the time. And they were imprisoned in a jungle jail and put before a firing squad to make them tell who the people were against them. And thank God, Tommy was able to look them in the face and not tell anybody else his